Canadians are mean and nasty. That is what the President of the United States thinks of you. Because you stopped buying American products. Because you canceled your American vacations. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has leveled the most aggressive trade ultimatum in the history of U.S.-Canada relations. This wasn't a mild warning or an invitation to negotiations. It was a firm, non-negotiable demand. The sitting U.S. president turned to one of America's closest allies, a country sharing the world's longest peaceful border, and told them to comply fully or face total economic devastation. Mark Carney, Canada's newly elected Prime Minister, an economist with experience guiding major central banks through two of the most significant financial crises in modern history, stood his ground. He refused to yield. The developments in the 72 hours that followed this ultimatum should worry every American who values constitutional order, economic stability, and the integrity of international agreements. This confrontation is about more than just tariffs. It raises a fundamental question. Does the United States honor the agreements it enters into? Can a sitting president unilaterally dismantle a trade deal he personally crafted and celebrated without facing any consequences? When a G7 leader declares that the existing bilateral framework is obsolete, it signals a profound, irreversible shift in North American dynamics. The origins of this crisis can be traced back to December 2025, when Donald Trump publicly floated the idea of Canada joining the United States as the 51st state. Initially, Canadian officials dismissed these comments as exaggerated rhetoric, but the tension grew as U.S. diplomats subtly urged Ottawa not to reject the idea too publicly. By mid-January, the diplomatic atmosphere had noticeably chilled. The crisis erupted on February 17, 2026, during an off-the-record White House briefing. A senior economic advisor openly outlined the tariff plan to journalists. Reports from the Globe and Mail and the Washington Post revealed how the U.S. administration framed Canada's resistance to sovereignty-related issues as a political challenge that demanded an economic response. A leaked briefing summary containing deliberately provocative language reached Ottawa within 48 hours. This wasn't just about correcting trade imbalances. It was about enforcing submission. Carney's team quickly recognized the gravity of the situation. On February 19th, Carney and his team held a 6-hour scenario planning session in Langevin Block, near the House of Commons and the Prime Minister's office. This session involved top officials, including the Finance Minister, the Governor of the Bank of Canada, senior trade officials, and former senior IMF leaders. This wasn't an ad hoc reaction, but rather the activation of a pre-existing contingency plan, which had been carefully developed over weeks. On February 24, 2026, shortly after Trump's Truth Social post, Carney's chief of staff contacted the already awake Prime Minister at approximately 6:15 a.m. A government insider confirmed that the message was perfectly in line with the expected scenario. Within the hour, Carney called a cabinet session. The consensus was clear. Canada needed to respond quickly, with a robust economic countermeasure that would not only address Washington's demands, but also send a strong global message. Canada would act offensively, not defensively. By 7:45 a.m., Reuters reported that Canadian trade lawyers were drafting USMCA dispute complaints. By 9:01 a.m., the Canadian Embassy in Washington had briefed 22 Senate offices from states heavily reliant on Canadian trade about the likely economic consequences, even before Carney's public remarks. At 11 a.m. Eastern, Mark Carney faced the cameras at Rideau Cottage in Ottawa. No teleprompter, no notes in sight. He appeared as if prepared for this exact confrontation. Carney spoke plainly. The United States has presented an ultimatum. Canada does not accept ultimatums. We are a sovereign country, a NATO founder, a treaty ally, and the partner in the most significant trading relationship either nation possesses. The room in Ottawa went silent. Carney continued. Today, Canada begins a thorough review of export permits for critical minerals to the United States, including cobalt, lithium, and rare earth elements, which are essential for American defense industries. We are also applying immediate reciprocal 35% tariffs on American consumer goods. Furthermore, we are invoking Chapter 31 of the USMCA to challenge the legality of these tariffs through international dispute mechanisms. Carney paused before adding, "The United States will see that threats against Canada yield real consequences." The statement, "Canada has consequences," quickly spread throughout Washington. Markets reacted instantly. Automakers that depend on Canadian parts saw their shares drop by 3.7% in the first trading hour. Energy stocks in the Midwest declined, and by noon, the S&P 500 had dropped by 94 points. This isn't the first time U.S. presidents have tested economic pressure on allies, only to face strong pushback. Reagan's semiconductor tariffs on Japan in 1980 triggered retaliatory actions, which eventually led to a negotiated resolution after some alliance damage. Reagan learned the hard way that economic partners should be treated as equals, not subordinates. In 2002, Bush's steel tariffs were met with retaliation from the EU, Canada, and Japan. After a WTO ruling, Bush reversed course within 19 months. What makes this situation different is that Trump's February 24th move relied on political leverage within a treaty he personally negotiated and hailed as the best trade agreement ever, the USMCA. The USMCA has strict procedures for tariff changes, and legal experts argue that this action circumvented those rules. Jonathan Freed, former Canadian ambassador to the WTO, explained that this situation is unprecedented, with a treaty signatory using emergency tariff authority in a way that the agreement was designed to prevent. Carney's team understood this shift and acted immediately. By invoking Chapter 31, Canada ensured that the dispute would be handled in an international arena outside of U.S. domestic control. The Trump administration now faces a dilemma. If Trump yields or negotiates, it would be seen as a failure of the economic narrative he has sold to his supporters. If he proceeds with the 35% tariffs, the damage will be self-inflicted, leading to Canadian consumer tariffs, restricted exports of critical minerals, lengthy international litigation, and potential investor flight from integrated North American industries. This moment is a defining test for North American relations. The next few weeks will determine whether U.S.-Canada ties can recover before permanently altering the continent's trade and security foundations.